June 5th, 2009, Willow Creek, Ohio. It was the last day of school before summer break. Students were celebrating in the hallways, signing yearbooks, blasting music from their car stereos in the parking lot. But Samantha Lowell wasn't smiling. 17 years old, top 10 in her class. Quiet, observant, the kind of girl who wrote poems no one read and noticed things no one else did. That afternoon, she left school early. Teachers said she looked pale, like she hadn't slept. Her best friend, Rachel, later told police Samantha had been jumpy all week, kept checking over her shoulder, flinched every time her phone buzzed. Still, she said nothing. At exactly 3:48 p.m., Samantha made a call from the school payphone. She told her mother she was walking home. It was a 6-block route, 15 minutes, max. She never made it. By 5 p.m., Marshall Lowell, Samantha's mother, was pacing on her front lawn. She called Rachel. Nothing. Called the school. No one had seen her since dismissal. She walked the route herself, twice, yelling Samantha's name down every alley and behind every bush. By 6:30, neighbors joined the search. By 7:45, officers responded to a missing person call. And by 9 p.m., police began asking questions, but not in the right direction. The attention quickly turned to Eli Cross, the weird neighbor, 38 years old, single, lived alone across the street, worked night shifts at Willow Creek Community College. No kids, no family, didn't wave at neighbors, and, perhaps worst of all, drove an old black van. That was all it took. The police searched his property that night. They found Samantha's friendship bracelet under his back steps. He had scratches on his neck and what looked like muddy shoes near his trash bin. Eli told them he'd fallen trying to fix his fence. Said he'd never spoken to Samantha, that she'd probably dropped the bracelet weeks ago. Kids were always cutting through his yard. Nobody believed him. By morning, Eli's face was plastered on the local news. Suspect in teen's disappearance detained. The public breathed a sigh of relief. He was charged within 48 hours. But just before his first court appearance, he overdosed in jail, ruled a suicide, case closed. With Eli dead and a bracelet in evidence, the story was wrapped in a neat little bow. Willow Creek mourned briefly. A candlelight vigil, a mural at the high school, and a few news specials over summer. By the next semester, people stopped asking questions. The town's kids grew up, and Samantha became a ghost of the past. But one person never moved on. Marshall Lowell never believed the official version. She knew her daughter, cautious, deeply intuitive, not the type to take rides from strangers. She remembered the final days before Samantha vanished. Her daughter kept locking her bedroom door. She started sleeping with the light on. Once, Marcia caught her burning something in the backyard. A note, she thought. But Samantha wouldn't explain. After Eli's death, Marcia begged the police to reopen the case. She insisted the bracelet was planted, that something or someone was still out there. No one listened. Marcia spent the next 12 years mailing letters to journalists, podcasts, missing person forums. Every few months, she would show up at City Hall with Samantha's photo, the one from her 11th grade class, and ask, "Why aren't you looking for her?" People dismissed her as a grieving mother who couldn't let go, but she knew her daughter wasn't gone. She knew Samantha was somewhere. The return, 12 years later. June 12, 2021. A hot, muggy afternoon. 2 officers sat behind the front desk of the Willow Creek Police Department, arguing over what to order for lunch. Then, the door buzzed open. A barefoot woman stepped inside, wrapped in a hospital-style blanket, eyes sunken, hair knotted. She didn't look like much, just another drifter, they thought. But then she said 4 words that stopped them cold. "I'm Samantha Lowell, back from the dead." The room fell silent. She stepped forward slowly, clutching a manila folder to her chest. When they asked where she'd been, her voice cracked, locked underground. "And I know who did it." The file she handed over contained. For Polaroid photos of chains, a locked room, and a hidden door. A burned police ID, half charred, but the badge number was still visible. and a typed document labeled names they never investigated. At the top of the list, Detective Ronald Shea, the same officer who publicly declared her a runaway and helped close the case after Eli's death. The town that once mourned Samantha was about to reopen its darkest wound, because not only had they blamed the wrong man, they had protected the right one. And the girl they all thought was gone, she was about to tell a story no one was ready to hear. Willow Creek Police Department, June 12, 2021. When the woman entered the station that afternoon, officers barely looked up. It had been a quiet day. No major calls, no threats, no drama, until she whispered, "My name is Samantha Lowell. I was taken, and I know who did it." For a moment, no one moved. Then an officer stepped forward slowly and asked for ID. She didn't have one, just a file folder, tightly gripped in hands that were visibly shaking. Inside that folder were 4 Polaroids and 1 half-burned police badge, the kind issued in Willow Creek. Over a decade ago, the station snapped into action. 2 female officers rushed her into the back for medical attention. A captain called dispatch. Another locked down the evidence room. The news spread in minutes. Within an hour, the entire building was under internal lockdown, but no one outside knew why. Not yet. The woman sat quietly in the back room, sipping from a paper cup covered in a blanket. When they asked where she'd been, she said, "A place with no clocks, no sunlight, and no name." They ran her fingerprints. It took 7 minutes. And when the result came back, Samantha Lowell, missing since June 5th, 2009, the room fell silent. 12 years of theories collapsed in an instant. The girl they said had run away. The case they said was solved. The file they buried behind a dead suspect. She was back. And her story was worse than anyone imagined. Over the next 4 hours, Samantha told them everything. Calmly, carefully, almost rehearsed. She said she was abducted while walking home from school. A man pulled up beside her in a police cruiser. He told her there had been an incident at her home. Her mom was hurt. He needed her to come with him. She recognized the badge, recognized his face, vaguely. She got in, but she never made it home. He didn't drive her to the hospital. He drove her to a warehouse. Samantha described being locked in a soundproof room beneath the building, a storage facility on the edge of town that had burned down in 2014. She said she was kept in a cell with no windows, fed twice a day, and moved only when the man was sure no one else was around. She heard other voices, at least 2 other girls. Only one she ever saw, Kayla. Age unknown. She was gone within a year. Samantha never found out what happened to her. She begged to be let go. She screamed. She scratched at the walls. She even broke a finger trying to pry open a vent. Nothing worked. In 2013, she managed to slip out of the room when the man forgot to lock the second door. She ran barefoot for blocks, but when she flagged down a squad car, she didn't recognize the officer. She tried to explain who she was, but he said she was clearly confused, likely on drugs, and brought her right back to the man who took her. She was punished, locked in complete darkness for 3 weeks. That officer? She remembers the name on his badge, Detective Ronald Shea. After that night, she stopped fighting, stopped begging, stopped dreaming, but she didn't stop observing. She started memorizing the man's movements, his routines, what made him angry, what made him sloppy, and slowly she planned. In 2021, the man grew sick. He coughed constantly, disappeared for days at a time. One night, he didn't come back. She waited 24 hours, 48. By day 3, she knew something was wrong. So she escaped through a loose panel in the wall she'd weakened over years. And for the first time in 12 years, she saw the sky. When they asked how she got the badge, she said, "He left it behind. Burned half of it, but I kept it. I wanted proof." She didn't just escape. She left with evidence. The badge. Polaroids of the room. Names she overheard. Officers, callers, even a prosecutor. She handed them over with shaking hands. And then she looked at the investigator in the room and said, You protected him. The name at the top of her list, Detective Ronald Shea, was still employed, still respected, and still working the cold case desk at Willow Creek PD. Samantha's return wasn't just an escape story. It was about to become a reckoning. June 13, 2021, Willow Creek, Ohio. Less than 24 hours after Samantha Lowell walked into the police station, her story had already fractured the town in two. Half the residents didn't believe her. The other half didn't want to, because if she was telling the truth, then someone in that very precinct, someone still wearing a badge, was not only guilty but protected. And it wasn't just one man. It was the system around him. Detective Ronald Shea had been a respected name in Willow Creek for 2 decades. He spoke at school safety assemblies, coached youth baseball, hosted neighborhood watch meetings. He was the face of good policing. So when Samantha named him directly, people pushed back. She must be confused. It's been 12 years. She's probably traumatized. Shea's not like that. He helped find her, didn't he? But the question no one could answer was this. Why was her name crossed off in the missing persons database just 48 hours after Shea took over the case? Jacob Rains, now leading the internal review, began digging into the original case files. What he found made his blood run cold. The timeline was manipulated. Logs and entries backdated. Witness statements were missing. Eli Cross's supposed confession never existed. In fact, there was no audio, no written statement, just a typed summary by Shea himself. Eli's home was searched before a warrant was approved. And Samantha's bracelet, the evidence that tied him to the case, had no chain of custody. It appeared, just like that. Jacob realized something horrifying. Eli didn't kill himself because he was guilty. He was framed. Jacob interviewed old neighbors, retired cops, and school staff. One name came up over and over. Shea. He was everywhere. At the school the day Samantha vanished. On the scene before backup arrived. In charge of coordinating the media. And yet, his involvement was never questioned. Because he wore the badge. And because people trusted him. Some even said he'd warned them. That girl? Trouble. Run away. Let it go. And they did. One officer, off the record, confessed. I heard Samantha call dispatch once. In 2013, she said her name. Then the line went dead. But the call log? Gone by morning. For years, Samantha's mother, Marshall Lowell, tried to make noise. But every time she spoke up, someone shut her down. Her FOIA requests were lost. Her appeals to reopen the case were denied. Local news stopped returning her calls. And when she once mentioned Shea in an online forum, her internet was disconnected the next day. She was gaslit, mocked, told she was unstable. Even her pastor asked her to stop talking about it at church. The town didn't want her grief. They wanted peace. And Shea gave them that by giving them a scapegoat. Once Samantha reappeared, Jacob pushed for Shea's immediate suspension. But higher-ups resisted. One official said, "This could ruin careers. Let's wait for more proof." The deeper Jacob dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a bad cop. This was an institution choosing silence over justice. At a private debriefing, Jacob asked Samantha if she wanted to go public. Her answer? "They already erased me once. Let them try again." She agreed to speak in front of a grand jury. And in that room, she named not one, but 3 officers who had visited the warehouse while she was locked inside. Not just Shea, a lieutenant, a patrolman, and a district attorney's assistant. Her story wasn't just about being taken. It was about being ignored, disbelieved, and buried. Over and over again, the SBI began issuing subpoenas. But before the first officer could be brought in, Detective Ronald Shea disappeared. Gone. No phone. No car. Security footage from his home? Erased. Just like Samantha, he vanished. But this time, there was no one coming to find him. June 2021, undisclosed location, Ohio State Bureau of Investigation, SBI. The agents didn't know what to expect when Samantha Lowell handed them the folder. Some thought her memories would be too foggy after 12 years. Some assumed her trauma would render her unreliable. Some even believed she might be imagining parts of it. But when she opened that manila folder and began laying the contents on the table, piece by piece, everything changed. Because Samantha hadn't just escaped. She had built a case. The folder contained 1. For Polaroid photos. 2. 3. A half-burnt badge with a traceable serial number. 4. 5. Hand-drawn maps of the interior layout. 6. 7. Detailed lists of dates and times, logged by memory. 8. 9. And most chilling of all, a USB drive with hours of audio recordings. 10. Samantha had been watching, listening, waiting, and she made sure someone else would hear it all. The first file on the drive was labeled March 17th, 15 entry, subject, Shay. The audio was shaky, distorted, but the voice was unmistakable. You know they don't care about you, right? Even if you scream, no one's listening anymore. I gave them a body. They're happy. It was Detective Ronald Shay, talking, laughing. The agent hit pause. The room went silent. Samantha leaned forward and whispered. He said that the night after Kayla disappeared. Over the years, Samantha discovered a man used a dictation recorder to record his own thoughts, like audio journals. He'd play them when he thought she was asleep. One night, he forgot to lock the cabinet. She stole 2 tapes, found an old USB recorder among his junk, and began re-recording his words, bit by bit. Some nights, when he left the door cracked, she'd press record and hide the device under a loose floor tile. Over time, she collected over 13 hours of audio. In the recordings, Shay mentions others. A Mick from the DA's office who cleaned up paperwork. A watch commander who looked the other way twice. A detective who delivered something to the basement in 2011. She never saw what. And a man he referred only as the investor who paid to keep things quiet. Every name she heard, she wrote down. Every voice she heard, she memorized. She didn't escape as a victim. She came back as a witness. And her evidence? Bulletproof. Samantha drew maps of the underground facility she was held in. A forgotten storage facility near the outskirts of Willow Creek. It had caught fire in 2014, or so the report said, but she claimed only the top floor burned. The basement? Still intact. Still hidden. She remembered 2 staircases. A hatch disguised under floorboards. A keypad lock with 4-digit code, 1977. Investigators were skeptical until they found building blueprints buried in town records. And there it was, a sealed sublevel, never inspected, never logged. SBI sent an undercover team to the site under the pretense of surveying old fire damage. What they found inside was undeniable. A steel door bolted shut from the outside. Scratched writing on the inner walls. A chain bolt with skin fibers, later matched to Samantha. And embedded deep in the plaster, behind a false panel, a box. Inside the box, a cassette tape, a disposable camera, and a journal. Her journal. The handwriting began small. Fearful. Day 3, I'm cold. I think he knows I'm watching him. I don't think I'll ever see the sun again. As the entries continued, the writing grew clearer, more defiant. Day 1262. I know his schedule. I know his patterns. I know what he's afraid of. Day 3281. If I die in here, this book needs to make it out. On the last page, she wrote, he said I'd never be believed. He said the town loved him more than they'd ever loved me. But I'm still here, and now they'll have to choose. That same night, 2 of the men named in the recordings lawyered up. The third resigned. The files Samantha brought back weren't just evidence. They were a time bomb. And with Shay still missing, someone else was about to step forward because there was another girl, and she didn't survive. October 2022, Ohio State Grand Jury. After 15 months of secret investigations, Samantha Lowell's story finally reached the courtroom. The evidence was airtight. DNA matched the holding cell. audio tapes naming accomplices, building blueprints proving an illegal sublevel where she was held, a journal with dates, witness descriptions, and behavioral patterns, the kind of thing even seasoned investigators couldn't replicate. The press should have been swarming, but somehow they weren't. The trial wasn't publicized. There were no TV cameras, no headlines, no live tweets. It was held in a closed courtroom for Samantha's protection. But behind those locked doors, she sat across from the very town that chose to forget her, and she told them everything. She spoke with clarity, pain, poise. She stared down lawyers, retired officers, and even the family members of those who once claimed to care about her. I screamed, and you didn't hear me because you didn't want to. 2 officers were indicted. A third cut a deal and confessed. But Detective Ronald Shea, the man who started it all, was still missing. Rumors swirled. Some said he was living under a false name. Others claimed he was dead. One anonymous tip said he fled the country with help from a retired judge. But the biggest twist came when Samantha's journal was entered into evidence, and the prosecutor read a passage aloud. I wasn't the first, and I wasn't the last. Remember Kayla, the girl Samantha mentioned in Chapter 2? Authorities reopened missing persons files from 2009 to 2014 across 3 counties. One name kept appearing. Kayla Briggs, age 14, reported missing in 2010. Case closed in 2012 as a presumed runaway. But here's the twist. Samantha drew a tattoo Kayla had on her left arm, a small butterfly with 3 dots underneath. She said Kayla was with her for 7 months, then taken away and never returned. The court compared it with Kayla's original missing persons file. Same tattoo, same birthday, same county. The case was reopened, and a second set of remains was discovered, buried in the field behind the warehouse where Samantha had been held. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Samantha broke down when a forensic photo was shown. She had carried Kayla's name in her memory for 12 years. She had once promised her, through the vent, if one of us makes it out, we tell the truth. Now she had, but Kayla never got come home. 2 officers received plea deals in exchange for testimony. One served just 18 months. The other was given probation. The DA's office declined to prosecute higher officials, citing insufficient direct evidence. Samantha wasn't even notified until the deals were finalized. She sat outside the courthouse in silence as the town once again tried to move on. No press release, no monument, no official apology. One city official was quoted off camera saying, "It's best for everyone if we don't reopen old wounds." Samantha packed up and left Willow Creek 1 week later. But before she did, she posted a single line on a message board for survivors. You don't need a trial to know the truth. You just need to survive long enough to tell it. To this day, Ronald Shea's face is still on the SBI's most wanted list. No reward has ever been offered. And Samantha? She lives in another state, under another name. But every now and then, she sends a letter to the only person who believed her. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers back, I hear you. Now I ask you, if a town erased your name, ignored your cries, and called your captor a hero, would you forgive them? Let me know what you do in the comments.